Ah, child, some memories are not soft and golden. Some are heavy, like rain-soaked clothes clinging to the skin, refusing to let go. Mine is a memory of tears, tears born not of weakness, but of betrayal. For what wound cuts deeper than when it is carved by someone you trusted? Listen closely, for this is not just a story of sorrow. It is a story of how even the most broken heart can learn to fight back. Trust, child, is a fragile thing, softer than silk, but when broken, it cuts sharper than any blade. I remember the early days when my heart was still young and open. There was laughter then, the kind that filled the house like the smell of warm bread baking in the oven. I believed people believed that kindness would always return kindness, that loyalty was a bond unshakable. He was someone I leaned on, someone whose words seemed steady as the old oak tree outside my window. His promises were gentle, and his voice had a way of sounding like comfort, even when storms gathered outside. I thought, foolishly perhaps, that such steadiness could never falter. We would sit together in the evenings, sharing stories as the oil lamp flickered. His eyes would shine with what I thought was truth, and I gave him my trust freely, as one offers water to a thirsty traveler. My heart, child, was unguarded, because I had not yet learned the cruel lesson that sometimes betrayal wears the mask of love, and sometimes lies are spoken with the softest voice. Looking back now, I see it clearly. The signs were there, hidden in the shadows of his smile, tucked beneath words that rang a little too sweet. But at the time, I only saw what I wished to see. A companion, a protector, a friend. Oh, child, trust is the seed of both joy and sorrow, and mine was about to grow thorns. A smile can hide a serpent, child, and sometimes the sweetest fruit carries the sharpest poison. The first cracks were quiet, almost invisible. A change in tone, a glance that lingered too long elsewhere, the way he would avoid my questions with words that floated but never landed. At first, I brushed them aside. When you trust someone, you build excuses for their shadows, pretending they are nothing but tricks of the light. I remember one evening how vividly it lives in me still. He returned late, smelling not of the fields or the firewood, but of something foreign, something I could not name. His eyes would not meet mine, and his laughter, once rich and warm, now rang hollow in the room. When I asked where he had been, his reply was swift but brittle, like glass ready to shatter. I wanted to believe him. Oh, how desperately I wanted to cling to the world I thought we had. For when trust is all you have, you hold it tighter, even as it slips through your fingers like water. But deep within me, child, a whisper began to stir. A whisper that told me something was wrong, that the man I trusted was building walls of secrets, and that those walls would one day collapse, leaving me buried beneath them. I did not yet know the storm that betrayal would bring, but the wind had already begun to change. There are moments, child, when truth does not arrive with a thunderclap. It slips in like a thief, stealing the air from your lungs before you even realize what has been taken. It was an ordinary day or so, it seemed. The sun shone through the lace curtains, dust dancing in the golden light. I was folding laundry, humming a tune my mother once sang, when I found it, a letter, tucked carelessly between the pages of a book he had left on the table. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The words stared back at me, sharp as daggers, soft as poison. They were not meant for my eyes, but for another. Promises written in the same hand that had once written to me. Tender words, sweet confessions, but not mine to keep. I could not breathe. The room seemed to shrink, the air turning heavy, pressing down on my chest. My knees gave way, and I sank onto the chair, the letter still clutched in my hand. Silence filled the house, but it was not peaceful. It was suffocating. In that silence, my heart broke not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like glass cracking beneath a steady weight. And perhaps that is the cruelest way of all, for the world went on as if nothing had happened, while mine collapsed in secret, Betrayal, child, is not just in the act. It is in the silence that follows, when you realize the person you trusted most was a stranger all along. When the mask slips, child, you do not just lose the person you loved, you lose the world you built around them. He came home that evening, whistling as though nothing weighed upon him. I sat in the dim glow of the lamp, the letter folded neatly on the table between us. My hands were steady, though my heart felt like it was splintering inside my chest. I asked him gently at first about the words on that page. His face changed in an instant, the color drained, the smile faded, and the silence grew thick between us. He tried to deny it, weaving stories like cobwebs, fragile and false. But lies once seen cannot be unseen. His excuses fell apart beneath my gaze, and with every broken word, another piece of trust crumbled to dust. Finally, he grew angry because the truth cornered him where lies once gave him room to breathe. His voice rose, sharp, defensive. But mine did not. I sat still, my silence louder than his shouting. And in that silence, I saw him for what he was: not a protector, not a friend, but a betrayer who had traded love for deceit. That night, child, the house felt colder than any winter storm. The laughter we once shared was gone, replaced by walls of distance and a silence that screamed louder than any argument. My heart was shattered, and no glue could piece it back the same again. Betrayal leaves no visible wound, but it bleeds within you every time you remember. Tears, child, are the language of a heart too burdened for words. Mine spoke every night, soaking my pillow until even the moon seemed to weep with me. After the betrayal, the days dragged like heavy chains. I moved through the house like a shadow, doing the chores, tending the meals, yet feeling hollow, as though my spirit had slipped away. By day I could mask my sorrow, but when night fell and silence wrapped the world, the grief returned with merciless claws. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling beams, listening to the lonely creaks of the house. And then the tears would come hot, relentless, unbidden. They carried with them all the questions I could not ask, all the answers I would never receive. Why? Why betray the hand that trusted, the heart that believed? Some nights I whispered prayers, asking for strength. Other nights I simply wept until exhaustion stole me into uneasy dreams. But whether I prayed or pleaded, the river of tears flowed all the same. Yet, child, I tell you this, in every tear lies a seed. At first it feels like sorrow alone, but slowly it begins to water something else, a hidden strength, a quiet fire, a resolve waiting to be born. I did not know it then, but my tears were not only grief, they were preparing me for the fight that would follow. Even rivers, child, wear down stone. My tears, though born of sorrow, began to carve a new path within me. Night after night I thought my weeping was weakness, but slowly I began to see it differently. Each tear was a release, washing away a little of the poison betrayal had poured into me. They did not weaken me. They cleansed me. One evening I caught my reflection in the window, pale and tired, but my eyes were different. Behind the redness and the grief, there was a glimmer, small, faint but steady, a spark that whispered, "You are still here." I began to rise earlier, forcing myself to step into the morning light. I tended the garden with hands that trembled, but each seed I pressed into the soil reminded me that life could grow even after storms. The flowers did not ask for permission to bloom. They simply reached for the sun, and so I began to reach too. The tears still came, but they no longer drowned me. Instead, they carried me forward, like a river moving toward some distant shore. With every night of sorrow, I grew a little stronger, though I hardly realized it at the time. Pain may bend a woman, child, but it cannot break her if she learns to let her tears flow into strength. Strength does not always arrive with a roar, child. Sometimes it slips in like dawn, soft, steady, and undeniable. In the beginning, I thought survival meant hiding behind silence. But betrayal had already torn my silence apart. What once felt like a shield had turned into a prison, and I could no longer bear its weight. So, little by little, I began to change. I no longer asked where he went or what he did, for I already knew the answer lived in shadows. Instead, I turned inward. I learned to draw power not from his words, but from my own breath, my own heartbeat. I stopped cooking his favorite meals. I stopped waiting by the door for the sound of his return. I began to sit with my own company, lighting the lamp not for him, but for myself. The house, once filled with the echoes of betrayal, began to carry something new, the sound of my resolve. And though my voice was still quiet, it was no longer voiceless. Each decision I made, no matter how small, was a defiance, a step away from dependence, a step toward dignity. Sometimes, child, the fiercest rebellion is not in shouting or fighting, but in choosing not to bow anymore. There is power, child, in refusing to be broken, even when the world expects you to bend. At first, he hardly noticed my change. He still walked through the door with the same hollow laughter, the same scent of secrets clinging to his clothes. But slowly he began to feel the shift in the air. I no longer rose to greet him. I no longer searched his face for lies disguised as smiles. My silence was no longer wounded. It was strong, deliberate, unshakable. When he raised his voice, I did not cower. I let his words fall like stones into an empty well, swallowed by the darkness, never touching me. When he mocked, I did not weep. My tears had already built me a river, and I would not drown again. There came a night when he slammed his hand against the table, demanding the obedience he once took for granted. I looked at him, then truly looked, and for the first time he turned his gaze away. He saw it, child, the strength that betrayal had forged in me. A woman who has endured betrayal is no longer the same. She rises from her sorrow like tempered steel, scarred, yes, but unbreakable. That was the night I knew. He could no longer rule me. My resolve had become my shield, and betrayal had unknowingly armed me with a strength he could never take away. Betrayal may wound the heart, child, but it also teaches it how to endure. The years that followed were not easy. The scar of betrayal lingered, a reminder etched deep within me. There were days when I still felt its sting, when memories returned like unwelcome visitors knocking at the door of my mind. But I did not let them stay. I had learned that pain, like storms, passes if you refuse to let it settle. I carried myself differently. My shoulders no longer hunched under the weight of secrets not mine to bear. My steps grew steadier, my voice firmer. I discovered a strength I never knew. I possessed the strength to walk forward, without looking back for answers I would never find. The garden became my sanctuary. I would kneel in the soil, pressing seeds into the earth, and watch as they grew in their own time, despite the seasons. That child became my lesson. Growth can follow ruin, and beauty can rise even from the ashes of betrayal. Yes, the wound remained, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it became the mark of survival, a memory I carried not with shame, but with quiet pride. Scars, child, are not chains. They are maps, guides of where we've been, and reminders of where we must never return. In time, I came to see that betrayal, though cruel, had given me a gift. It stripped away illusions, tore down the fragile walls of false promises, and left me standing face to face with my own strength. For what is a heart if not tested? What is a soul if not tempered by fire? I did not forgive him, nor did I forget. Forgiveness is not a duty, it is a choice, and I chose instead to carry my truth, my dignity, my freedom. He became a chapter closed, while I remained the author of my story. And when I sat with others who had been hurt, I could offer them more than pity. I could offer understanding. I could tell them, yes, it breaks you, but you will rise. Yes, the tears fall, but they water the ground for your strength. So remember this, child. Betrayal may leave its mark, but it cannot steal your spirit unless you hand it over. Let your tears flow, let your voice tremble, but never let your soul bow. For even in the deepest wound lies the seed of resilience. I am not defined by the one who betrayed me. I am defined by the woman who survived him. So, child, that was my memory of tears, a story not of weakness but of survival. Betrayal may have stolen pieces of my past, but it could not claim my future. I rose, not because I was unbroken, but because I learned how to stand even while broken. Remember this: trust is precious, and betrayal is a cruel teacher. But even the cruelest lessons can make the spirit stronger. I carry my scars not as shame, but as proof that I endured, that I fought, and that I lived. And now, as I whisper this to you, I ask, when the day comes that someone breaks your trust, will you drown in sorrow? Or will you rise from it, as I did? If you wish to hear more of Granny's memories, subscribe, and join me again for stories the world has long forgotten.